rebuilding women's productivity post-pandemic to improve and strengthen the society, especially the recovery process. This is in line with our target of SDGs, previous G20 declarations, and G20 Empower vision as an action-driven alliance to progress and accelerate women's productivity post-pandemic. Today's discussion will be divided into the first part of three keynote speakers from our Minister of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, Minister of SME and Cooperative, Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy, followed by the second part of two sharing sessions from the private sectors and the government on how to develop enabling policy data system and related programs to improve women productivity, including in entrepreneurship and business. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we understand the importance to scale up, to improve, to support women's productivity as an important pillar for economic growth. Therefore, I sincerely hope that this event can contribute to wider discussion and action-oriented recommendation on how private sectors and business communities can engage and collaborate in tackling global issues that have a significant effect on women, and how adaptive policy is relevant to solve and minimize the gender gap in workforce and entrepreneurship faced by women. Last but not least, wishing everyone fruitful discussion. With that note, on behalf of G20 Empower Indonesia, allow me to extend our great appreciation of your participation, contribution, and the good collaboration. Recover together, recover stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rinawati Prihatiningsi, for your welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the next opening remarks from the Minister of Women Empowerment and Child Protection of the Republic of Indonesia. Please welcome Ms. Bintang Puspa Yoga.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Nama Budaya, Salam Kebajikan. Honorable Bapak Teten Mas Duki, Minister of Cooperative and Small and Republic of Medium Enterprises, Republic of Indonesia, Honorable Bapak Erick Thohir, Minister of State-Owned Enterprises, Republic of Indonesia, Republic of Indonesia, Chair G20 Empower, Ibu Yesi, Co-Chair G20 Empower, Ibu Rina, Co-Chair W20, Ibu Dian, Honorable Gusti Kanjeng Putri Bendoro, Co-Chair of National Crab Council of Indonesia, Region Yogyakarta, Ibu Nita Yudi, President of IWAPI, delegation from all G20 member countries, honorable speakers and participants. It is an honor for us at the Indonesian Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection to be able to participate in this auspicious event. We need to build strong cooperation in tackling the challenges faced by women in this pandemic era. This is why we are gathered here today to strengthen our commitment to address various issues for women in G20 countries and throughout the world. Ladies and gentlemen, currently we are still struggling to achieve economic recovery due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a huge impact on women. The crisis has exacerbated existing gender inequality, making women even more vulnerable. The various problems experienced by women, especially those related to socio-economic aspects, include many women workers experience layoff or are laid off, including formal, informal, and migrant workers. Significant amount of women who are struggling to become the backbone of the family because their husbands are laid off, isolated, or passed away due to COVID-19. Women entrepreneurs are deeply impacted. They are threatened with the sustainability of their businesses due to declining sales figures or scarcity and high price of raw material for production. Ladies and gentlemen, women potential must continue to be developed and maximized not only for the sake of the country economy, but also for the sake of family economic resilience. It is our collective duty to empower women, encourage women entrepreneurs, continue to innovate and protect women both from stigmatization, stereotype, other social construction that harm women, as well as gender-based violence. Empower women can inspire and benefit their families, communities, countries, and the world. In Indonesia and around the globe, micro, small, and medium enterprises play a key role in economic development. In Indonesia economy, the contribution of MSMEs cannot be separated from the role of women. Women own and manage around half of approximately 64.5 million MSMEs. This is not only a potential for post-pandemic economic recovery, but also a foundation for long-term economic stability. Ladies and gentlemen, as the host of the G20 presidency, we will continue to encourage all stakeholders to rebuilding women productivity post-pandemic for inclusive and sustainable economic development. When women are empowered, children are well protected, prosperity will be available for all. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi 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 Om.
Thank you, Her Excellency, for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, the opening remarks will be delivered by the Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia. Please welcome Mr. Sandiaga Salahuddin Uno.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. Greetings to you all. Excellency, Minister of Women Empowerment and Child Protections, Republic of Indonesia, Minister of Cooperatives and Small and Medium Enterprises, Republic of Indonesia, Chairwoman, Co-Chairwoman, G20 Empower, and distinguished participants. First of all, welcome to the second side event, G20 Empower 2022. It is an honor for me to be here today in your presence. Indonesia's G20 presidency is an essential undertaking for this country, and together we strive for recover together, recover stronger. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 pandemic has caused structural changes in employment across sectors, impacting women and youth. OECD reported that youth workers are the most affected by rising unemployment at the beginning of the pandemic. Unemployment among youth would be a challenge. Therefore, the Indonesian government has released the National Economic Recovery 2022 budget, and it will be used for health, social protections, and economic resilience. The Tourism and Creative Economy Recovery budget will be utilized for national tourism recovery's key activities, such as micro-digital training, CHSE training and certifications, and microfinance for MSMEs and tourism villages. The Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economies is serious to support women's involvement in every leading activity such as culinary, fashions, craft, music, and movie applications, and games. The Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy has some strategies to rebuild women's productivity in post-pandemic by, first, take measures to tackle the gender pay gap in tourism. Second, promote entrepreneurship. Third, promote education and training through training programs for women in tourism. Fourth, place gender at the core of tourism policies and business practices. And fifth, empower women participations in the community and civil society. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, it is our greatest honor to collaborate with Excellencies and our distinguished guests today for the success of Indonesia's G20 presidency through the side events, particularly in the tourism and creative economy sectors. We are very much looking forward to a successful and productive meeting. From Balkondes Karanganyar near Borobudur Temple, the greatest super priority destinations of Indonesia, thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
A wonderful Indonesia.
Thank you, His Excellency, for the opening remarks. And now, ladies and gentlemen, next is a keynote speech session from the Minister of State on Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia. Please welcome Mr. Erick Thohir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu. Nama budaya, salam kebajikan. Yang saya hormati Ibu Rinawati Prihatiningsih selaku co-chair person G20 Empower. Ibu Bintang Puspayoga selaku Menteri Pemberdayaan Perempuan dan Perlindungan Anak Republik Indonesia. Bapak Sri Sultan Hamengkubuwono ke-10, Gubernur Daerah Istimewa Yogyakarta selaku tuan rumah Forum G20 Empower hari ini. Dan tentunya seluruh peserta Forum G20 Empower yang hadir di Hotel Royal Ambarukmo, Yogyakarta pada hari ini. Pertama, saya memohon maaf karena berhalangan hadir pada kesempatan kali ini karena ada agenda yang tidak bisa ditinggalkan di Jakarta. Namun tentu, ini tidak mengurangi spirit dan komitmen saya terhadap semangat emansipasi perempuan, baik di dunia bisnis maupun profesional. Hadirin yang saya hormati, Negara kita terdiri dari 49,5% kaum perempuan. Artinya, setengah dari penduduk Indonesia adalah perempuan. Dalam hal kontribusi terhadap perekonomian, perempuan Indonesia mampu memasuki hampir seluruh mata rantai usaha. Meski begitu, tidak dipungkiri masih terdapat banyak tantangan yang dihadapi oleh perempuan Indonesia yang hendak berkiprah di dunia bisnis maupun profesional. Mulai dari isu gender pay gap, kurangnya representasi perempuan di level strategis maupun di pucuk kepemimpinan, ketimpangan akses terhadap teknologi, kekerasan dan diskriminasi yang berbasis gender, hingga kurang ruang aman bagi perempuan di tempat bekerja. Kondisi ini juga terjadi di institusi yang terkait dengan pemerintahan. Oleh karena itu, sejak awal masa kepemimpinan saya di Kementerian BUMN, kami memberikan perhatian khusus dalam memberikan rasa aman, nyaman, dan membuka kesempatan yang seluas-luasnya bagi perempuan di BUMN, termasuk mengupayakan lingkungan kerja yang bebas diskriminasi maupun kekerasan berbasis gender, equal rights, equal opportunities. Komitmen kami di BUMN tercermin dari beberapa kebijakan affirmative action. Salah satunya dengan membuat target 15% kepemimpinan perempuan di BUMN pada tahun 2021 lalu. Alhamdulillah target ini sudah tercapai. Kedepannya kami meningkatkan target 25% kepemimpinan perempuan pada tahun 2023. Tujuannya adalah untuk memberikan spotlight pada profesional perempuan di BUMN dengan kinerja yang cemerlang. Selain itu juga, melalui penerapan respectful workplace policy, kami mengatur lingkungan kerja BUMN yang bebas kekerasan dan bebas diskriminasi maupun pelecehan, dalam rangka menciptakan lingkungan yang inklusif serta menghargai perbedaan dan kesetaraan. Melalui respectful workplace policy, BUMN berkomitmen untuk menjunjung hak asasi manusia dalam mendorong kinerja, pertumbuhan, serta keberlangsungan perusahaan. Agar upaya ini dapat berjalan secara berkelanjutan, kami juga mendukung terbentuknya Sri Kandi BUMN. Sebagai komunitas yang siap berkarya dan memajukan BUMN, Sri Kandi BUMN juga menjadi sarana kolaborasi pengelolaan potensi diri bagi perempuan di BUMN. Tujuannya agar perempuan BUMN memiliki wadah untuk saling mendukung satu sama lainnya. Ada banyak output yang telah dihasilkan oleh komunitas Sri Kandi BUMN. Di antaranya, komitmen mewujudkan zero harassment di tempat bekerja, peningkatan kecerdasan investasi, pengelolaan keuangan, hingga kepemimpinan perempuan itu sendiri. Tentu harapan saya, Sri Kandi BUMN dapat terus berprogres seiring upaya transformasi human capital BUMN yang bebas diskriminasi gender, termasuk diantaranya penyegaran struktur kepemimpinan, menggeser pola pikir yang bias patriarki, penerapan core value akhlak, peningkatan profesionalisme, perbaikan budaya kerja, hingga pencapaian target kinerja dan kepemimpinan perempuan. Saya percaya BUMN dan Forum G20 Empowerment memiliki komitmen yang sama dalam hal pemberdayaan dan emansipasi perempuan, baik di dunia bisnis maupun profesional. Untuk itu, saya sangat mengapresiasi tujuan diadakan forum ini. Saya berharap BUMN dan stakeholder terkait dari Forum G20 Empowerment dapat terus berkolaborasi dalam memperkuat potensi perempuan di dunia bisnis dan profesional, sehingga perempuan Indonesia dapat meningkatkan kontribusinya dalam pertumbuhan ekonomi, sosial, dan kesejahteraan bangsa Indonesia, guna mewujudkan Indonesia yang maju, makmur, dan mendunia. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, His Excellency, for your uplifting speech. Ladies and gentlemen, our next keynote session will be delivered by the Minister of Cooperatives and Small Medium Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia. Please give a warm welcome for Mr. Teten Mas Duki. Kami persilakan Pak Teten.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. The Honorable Minister of Women, Empowerment and Child Protection, Republic of Indonesia, sahabat saya, Ibu Bintang, Minister of her state-owned enterprise, Pak Erick Thohir, and Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy, Mrs. Sandiaga Uno, Chairwoman G20 Empower, Ibu Yesi, and Chairwoman G20 Empower, Ibu Rinawati, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Greeting from Yogyakarta, from Indonesia. Today is a special day where we can meet physically with health protocol to discuss how to rebuild women productivity post-pandemic. The pandemic over the past 2 years has resulted in economic setback and disrupted consumer spending and global supply chain. The impact has been considerably more severe on SMEs than larger organizations in which they must face corporate insolvency or experiencing financial declines. This is important to note since SMEs are the backbone of a country, providing a high number of employment and contributing to the country's GDP. On top of new challenges brought to light by pandemic, it had also increased the gender gap in economic participation and opportunity. Research indicates that the pandemic mainly affects a woman entrepreneur, reaching a figure of 76% because they have to work from home. In Indonesia, 64% out of 64 million MSE are women, and it contributes as high as 60% to the national GDP. As the world navigates post-pandemic recovery and mitigates the impact to business, it is integral to also focus on recovering women and women-led business. Women-owned and led business are integral to effort to achieve gender parity in economic participation. They are also the backbone of many economies around the world, especially in Indonesia, where women-owned business have a key role in poverty reduction, employment generation, and economic diversification. Therefore, supporting women SMEs means investing in an inclusive and accelerated economic recovery. In line with SDGs target and G20 declaration, G20 Empower as an alliance between private and government intended to build stronger awareness on women productivity post-pandemic, supporting, improving, and scaling it up as an important pillar for economic growth. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Ministry of Cooperative and SMEs held the seminar on empowering women entrepreneurs through inclusive business that took place last March as side event G20, adopted 3 forward-looking policy recommendations which could strengthen the commitment on gender equality and women empowerment in rebuilding women productivity, especially in women-owned and lead SMEs, which are, first, increased collaboration between government, private sector, and investor to support women entrepreneurs. Second, encouraging policy in finance, in infrastructure that are gender sensitive and provide access to funding and legality. And third, improving financial digital literacy program for women to increase investment readiness. A woman-focused recovery goes together with the promise to inclusion and sustainable growth and removing barriers to women improvement, especially in economic and financial progress. With the pandemic widening the gender gap in the economy, especially SME, it's needed to take fast action so we can ensure that women are not left behind. We at the Ministry of Cooperative and SME recognize the significant role of women economic empowerment on society, families, and the economic at large. Therefore, it is clear that economic reasons for supporting women SME are clearly recognized. I do hope today's discussion will provide true and precise recommendation in rebuilding women productivity post-pandemic. So Indonesia and other G20 countries can adopt into policy and strengthening women SME cooperation and contribution on a national and global scale. Thank you for your attention and I wish you a successful event. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, His Excellency Bapak Teten Mas Duki for your insightful speech. His Excellency Teten Mas Duki and Her Excellency Bintang Puspayoga, thank you for your support in this meeting and for the G20 Empower. Please give a round of applause kepada Bapak Menteri dan Ibu Menteri yang sudah hadir. Kami ucapkan terima kasih atas kehadiran dan dukungan yang diberikan untuk G20 Empower. Kami persilakan kepada Bapak Teten Mas Duki dan Ibu Bintang Puspayoga untuk berkenan mengunjungi booth UMKM yang berada baik di dalam ballroom dan juga di area foyer. Kami persilakan Ibu, Bapak silakan. Sekali lagi kita berikan tepuk tangan, aplaus yang meriah untuk Bapak Teten Mas Duki dan Ibu Bintang Puspayoga. Kepada Bapak Ibu lainnya mohon berkenan untuk tetap di tempat dan kita akan melanjutkan agenda berikutnya. Baik Bapak Ibu, dapat kami informasikan bahwa tadi malam kita menyaksikan ada sebuah lelang live lukisan. Nah, kami informasikan last night a festive welcome dinner was held in Prambanan Temple. One of the main attraction was a live painting session. And depicting by excitement and of the G20 Empower Dinner event by artist Miss Astuti Kusumo. Her artwork was so enhancing that when it was put into auction, guests were eager to place their bid, and now we are very happy to inform you that the paintings has been sold for 100 million rupiah. Tepuk tangan, jadi sudah terjual Bapak Ibu 100 juta rupiah. To none other than Her Excellency Bintang Puspayoga. Terima kasih Bu Menteri sudah berkenan. Dan the profit from this auction will be given in large part to a chosen disability foundation. Sekali lagi kami informasikan bahwa lukisan tadi malam live auction sudah terjual 100 juta rupiah di support oleh Ibu Menteri Bintang Puspayoga. Baik Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, kita masih menunggu rangkaian acara selanjutnya. Kami mohon kesediaan Bapak Ibu untuk tetap di tempat. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, in this following session, we will shed more light onto the theme. There is rebuilding women's productivity post-pandemic. We will also look forward for the positive outcome from this discussion, and later we will conduct Q&A session. For online guys, to participate, you can simply drop your question on chat box along with the intended speaker. To lead the first session, it is my honor to invite our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Miss Michiko Achilles.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon and good morning. I am your moderator for the session 1. In session 1, we will discuss government perspectives on women's productivity and entrepreneurship post-pandemic. The topic is very timely because by now, many countries are in post-pandemic recovery era. And we have two objectives today in session 1. First, we will discuss the importance of developing and implementing policies, especially in economic sectors, including SMEs and entrepreneurs. And our speakers today will share their policy best practices and lesson learned. Number 2, we would like involve you and engage all of you to take action that we will recommend later today in our second plenary. Next slide, please. And I'm very happy and very honored to have 3 distinguished speakers today. Stefano Pizcanella, Director General for International and General Affairs at the Department of Equal Opportunities, Italy. Seong Mi Oh, Deputy Director, International Cooperation Division, Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, Republic of Korea, and Nicole Mant-Bazai, Senior Economic Policy Advisor and Director, the Secretary's Office of Global Women's Issues at the U.S. Department of State. And again, my name is Michiko Achilles. I am a G20 Empower Japan co-representative, and including this one, I have 3 roles for the government and 2 roles for private sector. Next slide, please. Okay. These are the discussion points we outlined in issue notes. All of them are very important questions, but obviously, if we address all the questions, probably we need more than a couple of hours. So our speakers today will focus on some of the points and share their experiences. Okay, so shall we start? We will start with Stefano, please. Is Stefano available? Okay, I don't see Stefano on the screen. All right, then he left or? Okay. Anyway, we will continue. Selmi, would you like to say hi?
Sorry, Miss Achilles, actually, apparently Stefano is not here.
Right, I see.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so we just have to be
Please
flexible.
continue, Miss Achilles, thank you.
Okay, so we will continue with the 2 speakers, I suppose. So Selmi, would you like to say hi?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me. And it's an honor to have discussion with people from all over the world. And it's my great pleasure to share the Korean government policies for women's economic empowerment for the post-COVID. Let me start with thank you. So let me start with the current status of women's labor in Korea. Can you show my slide, please? Next slide, please. Okay, so in the wake of COVID-19 in 2020, women were hit harder by the job crisis. Many women, in particular those in their 30s to 50s, lost their jobs, and it's seen as a serious and significant problem. Out of 219,000 job losses, over 137,000 of these were jobs held by women. There has been an upward trend in employment among women in their 30s and 50s, which reversed in 2020. Next slide, please. The gender employment shock, the employment shock caused by COVID-19 directly affected women's employment, and the key factors behind it are occupational segregation by gender and the gender gap in the labor market. To be more specific, women are more likely to work in the face-to-face service sector and face poor working conditions. In 2020, the top 3 occupations with the steepest decline in the number of employed people, so women accounting for 62% of the overall decline in the number employed from a year earlier. As more women in temporary jobs that do not guarantee strong job stability, women are more likely to lose their jobs. In addition, women had to give up their careers because family care responsibilities mainly fell on women. Therefore, for the Korean government, now is the time to make fundamental reforms to improve women's employment. In this slide, our focus was placed on expanding women's jobs from the face-to-face service sector to the specialized technology-based sector, and creating new jobs to quickly overcome the urgent job crisis. Next slide, please. So let's look at the Korean government initiatives. In March 2021, the Korean government announced the COVID-19 Women's Job Recovery Package, aimed at restoring and retaining women's jobs during the COVID-19 crisis and addressing the gender gap in the labor market for a leap forward to promising future jobs. I'd like to share with you the plans for 4 key strategies. 1. Expanding women's jobs in the public and private sectors. 2. Strengthen employment and startup support. 3. Providing caregiving and job retention support. 4. Tackling the gender gap for an inclusive labor market. Next slide, please. First, we increased the women's jobs in the public and private sectors by assigning a supplementary budget for job recovery for an immediate effect. 57,000 jobs that can utilize women's experiences were created mainly in the areas expected to see growing demand, such as caregiving, digital, and epidemic response sectors, contributing to women's returning to the workplace. Additional assistance was extended to facilitate the hiring of 20,000 women by offering the special employment promotion incentive to the employers of women with career interruptions, expanding the internship program with the women's re-employment centers, and support the labor cost of female R&D researchers. You can find the details in the table below. Next slide, please. Our second strategy was to provide tailored support for entrepreneurship and employment to help women quickly re-enter the labor market. The Korean government has also expanded support for training programs for new technology-based and skills jobs in line with the changing labor market. 30,000 women in their 30s and 50s are the age group who have been hit hardest by COVID-19 in the labor market, received employment support services from the Women Re-employment Centers and the Job Promotion Subsidy. In addition, the Region Industry Tailored Job Creation Support Program introduced a new service dedicated to women experiencing career discontinuation. Through this program, operated in partnership with local government, 8,000 career-interrupted women are receiving employment services tailored to their needs. Next, the multi-ministerial integrated employment service support service for women with career interruptions has been put in place with the collaboration of 8 ministries, such as the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, and Ministry of Employment and Labor, and Ministry of Science and ICT. This program has enabled women experiencing career interruptions to receive one-stop services, including job referrals and follow management through the Women's Re-employment Center after they complete training programs in science and technology and other professional areas. Finally, we hold a women's entrepreneurship contest to actively identify outstanding women-led startups, while the Women's Technology Starter Package program has been in place to increase package support for women aspiring to start their own technology-based business. Next slide, please. The government have worked to ease the care burden added by COVID-19 for women and scaled up job retention support to discourage women at risk of career discontinuation from withdrawing from the labor market. The Family Care Emergency Support Subsidy was extended until the COVID-19 emergency comes to an end to relieve the burden on work families, as they need to take unpaid family care leaves to look after their children amid school and preschool closures. The number of childcare providers who are officially recognized by the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family was increased to 12,000 to expand the public 101 and home visit childcare services. On top of that, more home visit care workers will be eligible for living cost support of 500,000 Korean won, targeting home visit caregivers. Indirect labor cost support also increased to support 30,000 workers in an effort to encourage business to use flexible work hours. 400 companies received specialized consulting services so that they could seamlessly switch to remote works. Next slide, please. To strengthen sustainable employment for women in the labor market going forward, it is important to address the gender gap in the labor market. To this end, we will improve working conditions, encourage women to advance into promising sectors, and deal with occupational gender segregation. To improve caregiving service qualities and provide professional caregivers with stable working conditions, research and review for the revision of a related law are underway to introduce a national certification system. The Act on the Improvement of Employment for Domestic Workers was also legislated to ensure better working conditions and enhance service qualities. In addition, the Double Bridge project was launched as a pilot program to provide training and career consulting throughout different life stages to women scientists and engineers, including female students in elementary, middle, and high schools, to have more women in the digital and other promising sectors. Next slide, please. The first structural reform was made to the affirmative action measures in 15 years since it was adopted in 2006, addressing occupational segregation by gender. Under the reform, the scope of eligibility for the AA policy was expanded to private companies with 300 regular employees and above, from the ones with 500 regular employees and above. The upgraded AA policy has analyzed the status of female workers by sector and introduced absolute grading element to improve its evaluation criteria in a bid to close the gender employment gap in the sectors where women are significantly underrepresented. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation on the Korean government policies. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Seong-mi.
Thank you.
I'm very surprised and pleasantly surprised that your government has so much extensive, very concrete policies to support women, especially in employment, as well as their education, reskilling. May I ask a question or two here, just to clarify? So, policies are great, but sometimes we have challenge in implementing the policies. What was your main challenge and how are you dealing with them?
Actually, the pandemic is not fully over now. So because the regulations keep changing, it was hard to ask them to follow the rules. And also, in the personal level, mainly the women are responsible for the maintaining family care stuff. So we try to tackle the rampant patriarchal culture in Korea. And in the social level, actually, companies also have had a hard time. Many companies are closed during the pandemic, and they are started to open gradually. So in this situation, the government should support inclusively to achieve goals rather than controlling or regulating companies excessively.
Very understandable. And one more additional question. So when we have all the policies for women, supporting women, men might react a little bit negatively. You know, why only women? We're in the same trouble. Is it happening to you in your country, and how are you dealing with that?
So yes, it's happening in Korea now currently because due to the president election. So kind of there's divide between the women and men. So we are making an effort to be kind of more gentle to each other genders.
I see.
So, and as I said, the patriarchal culture in Korea is very excessive. So we try to ease that gender equality kind of equation to each other. So, so I think we need to work more harder.
Very interesting because I think Japan shares similar, challenges culturally.
Mhm.
But thank you very much for sharing your excellent policies. All right, so shall we go to Nicole? Good morning, Nicole. I would say, what time is it over there? It's like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning.
It's 4:30 in the morning. That's right.
Thank you for getting up so early for us. And you are going to talk, right? I understand you decided not to use any presentation, but you're going to speak. Okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Ministers, excellencies, advocates, colleagues, and friends, greetings all. Thank you so much for inviting the United States to speak on government perspectives for supporting women's productivity and entrepreneurship following the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Nicole Mans-Bazawi, and I am the Director for Women's Economic Empowerment within the Secretary of State's Office of Global Women's Issues in the United States Department of State. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with you all today as we share ideas, best practices, and recommendations for how to advance women's economic security and economic agency, especially in the wake of increased challenges and setbacks due to COVID-19. As many of you know, the Biden-Harris administration released last October the United States' first ever national strategy for gender equity and equality. One of the key priorities within that strategy is to improve women's economic security and accelerate economic growth. We know that the global economy cannot reach its full potential when half of the workforce is left behind. Women and girls are full of potential. They are innovators, they are change makers and sources of solutions. We should be recognizing the strength that they bring to our workforces, and we should be strengthening social and legal protections for everyone. As governments, it's incumbent upon us to facilitate equitable access to quality education, working with partners to ensure equal access to finance, and promoting leadership opportunities for women and girls to show us the way. COVID-19 has had a devastating effect around the world. No nation has escaped this scourge. Businesses closed, economic growth slowed, and even halted completely in some places. Gains in women's rights and empowerment were stalled, and even more troubling, we are seeing them reversed. And most importantly, millions of lives have been lost. Though we are not yet out of the pandemic, we are looking towards building back our lives and our economies, creating a better, more equitable future for all. So to achieve this equitable recovery, we must ensure that all people have equal access to well-paying, quality jobs and decent work that promotes dignity. We must invest in and strengthen the care infrastructure on which our global economies so desperately depend. We must promote women's entrepreneurship and access to finance and digital technologies. And we must address the persistent gender discrimination and systemic barriers to the full, equitable, and meaningful workforce and economic participation of women and girls of working age. Some of you may know that we are in the midst of drafting the U.S. government's first ever women's economic security strategy. As a part of this, U.S. government departments and agencies have taken a close look to determine the most pressing challenges and barriers preventing women and girls of working age from equitably participating in the global economy. We engaged in consultations with more than 200 organizations and representatives from governments, non-governmental organizations, civil society, academia, think tanks, foundations, and the private sector, all reflecting input from thousands of men and women, gender advocates from over 30 countries around the world to help shape our recommendations. We heard truths that we already knew. Women and working age girls face inequitable barriers to finding quality, well-paying jobs due to limited access to education, including continuing education, technical skills training, and upskilling that would adequately prepare them for decent work. They do not have the same opportunities that their male colleagues enjoy from networks, business organizations, pathways from education or training into the workforce, and subsequent opportunities for promotion. These deficiencies faced by women and girls are too often exacerbated by gender-based violence, early and forced child marriage, early pregnancy, and harmful gender norms. Governments should therefore improve and increase equitable access to education and skills building, including technical, professional, and vocational training for women and girls in all their diversity. This is especially true for jobs in emerging and lucrative sectors that require specialized and advanced skills, such as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as digital skills, clean energy, sustainable agriculture, and climate technologies. Worldwide, there is insufficient public investment in the care economy, as care work has traditionally been assumed to be the responsibility of women and girls, and therefore was seen as a sector too often unregulated, unpaid, and underpaid. As a result, many families are faced with both prohibitive childcare and caretaking costs and a lack of availability of quality care options outside the home. Expanding access to quality childcare has the potential to yield multi-generational impacts by improving women's employment and productivity, child health and education outcomes, family welfare, business productivity, and overall economic growth. The U.S. government, along with the governments of Canada, Australia, and private foundations, have partnered with the World Bank and its recently launched Global Child Care Incentive Fund, which is housed at the World Bank, and it will expand access to quality childcare and early learning programs globally. Your governments can also participate in this fund, and we strongly encourage you to do so. Governments can also engage in gender-responsive budgeting that incorporates and addresses the disproportionate burdens of unpaid care and amplified negative economic and social impacts of COVID-19 on women and girls. And governments can enact laws and policies that cover parental leave, divorce, inheritance, sexual and reproductive health, flexible work, minimum and fair wages, benefits, support services for caretakers, and for workers seeking help in instances of labor abuse, as well as family tax credits. We also know that women's ability to access markets, including financial markets, credit, digital technologies, and networks, remains central to increasing women's entrepreneurship, job creation, and the overall economic security and empowerment of women. Yet women around the globe often face disproportionate difficulties gaining access to capital due to a lack of financial literacy and limited access to collateral, as they frequently have limited or no rights to ownership of land or other physical property. Therefore, governments should work with their financial institutions and private sector colleagues to ensure the integration of a gender lens into financial, digital, marketing, and trade products and services, meaning that we, as government representatives, should advocate that these entities consider how decisions are made regarding products and services to identify ways of supporting the well-being of both women and men, taking special care to ensure the inclusion of women in all their diversity. Governments can also encourage greater transparency in the financial, technology, and venture capital sectors to track the proportion of investments in women-owned and women-led businesses, again, trying to break down those harmful cultural norms and discriminatory stereotypes and practices. Indeed, it is imperative that we acknowledge the root cause of many challenges to women's meaningful economic participation, which is gender-based discrimination and harmful social norms that marginalize women, including those who face intersecting forms of discrimination. These practices include the devaluing of care work, discriminatory laws and practices limiting women's ability to access and control land, property, and finances, women's disproportionate responsibility of unpaid care work, factors contributing to wage and wealth gaps, women's disproportionate representation in the informal economy, limited representation in leadership positions in the formal economy, and gender-based violence and harassment. Governments, therefore, have an important responsibility to ensure equal and equitable social protections and the implementation of internationally recognized labor rights. Governments can also lead the way in promoting collaboration and communication across communities, families, religious leaders, indigenous authorities, and tribal members who can promote change in their communities and in their societies. We can ensure that policies benefit all members of society and engage men and boys in these discussions and encourage them to become our allies and advocates for women's equity and equality. We can base our recommendations on evidence and make the business case to companies that their productivity and profitability will increase when women have equitable opportunities for employment, training, advancement, and leadership within their companies. And governments can work with businesses to encourage supervisors, management, and leadership to take the necessary training and support the formation of employee working groups to help shape, institute, and implement safeguarding policies for preventing, reporting, and addressing gender-based violence and harassment in the workplace. Clearly, there is much work to be done, and governments can play a key role in advocating and implementing the necessary changes to ensure an equitable recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you again so much for allowing me to share with you some of our findings and recommendations, and I look forward to hearing additional ideas and solutions from all of you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Wow. So many issues you raised are still very real. I mean, even in the States and in many countries. Thank you for sharing that. I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned last year your government issued a national strategy for gender equality.
That's right.
Could you give us a little bit of a highlight of this strategy, please?
Yeah, thank you so much. So the National Strategy for Gender Equity and Equality is really looking at how we can engage to constructively empower women in all of their diversity through a number of different areas. Clearly, women's economic security is a very, very important part of it and one that I focus on. But it's also looking at women's participation across many different areas, including women's involvement in peace and security, women's meaningful participation in political processes. It's talking about women involved in leadership positions across companies, across government, and it has 10 key priority areas in which we're looking to advance gender equity and equality to make sure that all people can participate in the political and economic spheres in our country. I encourage those of you who would like to learn more to check out the White House website, which has links to the national strategy. It's really a fantastic document and a demonstration of the commitment of our administration to advance women's economic empowerment and women's empowerment writ large.
Thank you. I think that would be a great resource for many of us. And also, all the policies you mentioned, the importance of overcoming issues. What's working? What's not working in your experience, if you could share that?
Yeah, so I think that we are still really in the early stages of developing our economic strategy for empowering women economically around the globe. I think one of the really important things is to make sure that we are engaging in partnerships. Right? We, especially those of us in developed countries, should not be dictating to other countries what they need to do, right? First, we need to listen and we need to learn and understand what their challenges are, what their challenges the women and girls are facing, and then look for constructive ways to partner with local actors and look for ways to partner with the private sector and others that can be force multipliers. I think what really works is when we all come together and we acknowledge the challenges that women and girls face, and then we look for constructive ways to dismantle systemic barriers and increase women's participation. And it's so very important for us to make sure that we are including men and boys in this conversation as well, for them to be equal partners with us.
Very true. Thank you very much. And we tend to focus on women, and what we can do about them. But I think it's equally important to influence the stakeholders, and oftentimes stakeholders, senior positions are occupied by men, so we have to influence men as well. But how could we do that? I'd like to ask that question to you and to Xiaomi too. Would you like to start? How could we influence men decision makers and influence so that they understand more of the merit or benefits of liberating a woman's capability?
So I think we've seen a couple of really excellent examples of that earlier today when we had the minister speaking out about the importance of women's inclusion and women's empowerment. You know, having that conversation with men, including them in trainings, sharing with them the evidence, right? Let's go with some fact-based decision-making and recommendations, because we know that it's proven that women are equal partners and participate. There's additional jobs are created, societies benefit, children benefit, and I think it's really important. And I think men can really understand when they think about what sort of a future do they want for their daughters? What sort of a future do they want for their sisters? And I think that helping men understand that it's when everyone participates, everyone benefits.
Okay, so the evidence, data, and also conversation, having dialogue with them is very important. Thank you so much. Xiaoming?
Hi, yes. So I totally agree with you, Nicole. And then the part of the population is women, you know. So in the women's, the loss of female labor, is exaggerate the national competitiveness as well as personal life. Furthermore, women's economic empowerment is important to make a gender equal society, and then men should be understand also this in this part. And then also, if the man is only the breadwinner, work as a breadwinner, and it's really hard, big burden to maintain the family. And women is not were not born for taking family and stuff. So we need to understand each other, and then we need to understand there is a gender inequality structures in society, and then we help together. We help together and then collaborate together to make the more gender equal society. And then that was the first start point to make this world change.
Thank you. I totally agree. And I'm just curious, and this is a question to both of you. If we achieve gender equality and women are empowered to lead the life they want, then what happens to society and economy? In other words, in order to communicate with men in influence, they need to see what's in it for them. What will be, benefits? What will happen if this happens? Because some of them or many of them might be scared to face that if women occupies more than half or at least half of the senior positions, for example. So if that happens, including not just big companies, SMEs, and entrepreneurship, where women are underrepresented, what will happen? What change will happen to our society and economy? What do you think?
So I think that we will find much more stable and prosperous societies. You know, when you think of a woman entrepreneur, when she opens her business, it not only helps her and her family, but it also helps the community. It's a way to create jobs. It's a way to provide an example and mentorship for other women and other folks to follow in her footsteps. So, again, when women are full equal partners in this and can participate equitably, we see that societies thrive, communities prosper, economies grow, and it provides for much more stable and peaceful economies.
Mm-hmm. And if we could sort of show some kind of analysis data to support what's going to happen, that might be very helpful.
Data. Sorry, I missed you. So what was the data about?
This is about what will happen, how if we
That
achieve gender equality
is happening in real
in
life.
society and to economy.
I really want that kind of future come very early, because in Korea the situation now is really really bad now. I've never been experienced like this working as a official governmental official in the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, because I don't think all men think that the working for women's economic empowerment is kind of useless, and that we already achieved gender equal society, which is not. So if it happens, then maybe people can see as it is, and then people can see their compatibility and their talent as it is. So we don't need to kind of use energy or economic measurement or economic resources to beat this kind of useless things. So I think our society, as Nico said, the society will be very prosperous and very stable.
Okay. Yeah. I agree with you, and I also understand that for some people, it's hard to imagine what will happen, and that could cause some resistance to change.
Mhm.
And obviously, you have to overcome the resistance by, as you said, having conversation, showing positive data, so that they are not too scared. Okay. So,
Michiko, if I could just come back on that real quick. You mentioned data, and data is so important, and it is also one of the challenges that we face, right? Collecting data in various countries, sometimes just data on its own is difficult, but then trying to get to that next step and collect gender disaggregated data that can help lay that case, the business case, the political case for this, is something that is so important. And the United States has provided a voluntary contribution to the OECD to improve the ways that we collect gender disaggregated data so that countries around the world can be making informed policy decisions and recommendations. And so I think that would be a really important starting point for many countries, is to think about, how do you measure things? How do you collect data? And how can we get to that way of informing our decisions and recommendations going forward?
excellent point. I think every time we're asked to submit data internationally, we have a hard time just to make sure that we are aligned with other countries, the way you get data and everything. But that's a starting point. Thank you so much. My last question to you, both of you, is so policymakers, very important. And also, to implement policies, we need private sector's commitment. And how could we work together, the government side and private sectors? What would be some of the good tips for working together? Because that's how we are organized in this alliance of Empower. Any thoughts?
I think G20 Empower is one of the best practice in the world.
Thank you.
And they're seeking solutions to address the problem in the post-COVID in collaboration with the public sectors and private sectors, international level. So we need to listen what they want and what they need and what we offer, and then how can we solve the problems together. I think that is really important. So make more this kind of event and kind of incidents together more and more, and then let's be more collective.
Thank you so much.
I totally agree about the importance of communication, right? Communication leads to understanding. We in the United States, for example, work through our, clearly we work with our private sector, but also through our chambers and our business associations. And I think there are really ways that we can move forward to promote policies that will enhance women's participation and enable women's participation. And there are several companies in the United States that have just taken the initiative themselves and have really taken a close look at their policies regarding diversity and inclusion and equity, because they have also learned the business case that their companies, and there are many Fortune 500 companies in the United States that can tell you that once they became more inclusive and have had more women involved, their profit margins have increased and their companies have become more profitable. And they themselves are sometimes the best advocates for these necessary and welcomed changes.
Okay,
Thank you so
well,
much.
Ms. Achilles and the speakers, unfortunately, time is up, so we have to move on to the next session. Thank you for your participation and insight. Please give a round of applause to our speakers and Ms. Michiko Achilles. Thank you very much. It was very exciting to receive insight from this strong female character about how important women's roles in our society. And now moving on to the next session, I will hand the station over to our next moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Lenita Tobing. Kita beri tepuk tangan untuk Ibu Lenita Tobing. Silakan.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to this the distinguished chairwoman, Ibu Yesi, distinguished co-chairwomen, Ibu Rinawati, Ibu Ekonofi, all the chairs, Pak Indra, and all the distinguished delegates and participants on site and online. Welcome to the second session of the side event, Private Sector Perspectives on Women Productivity and Entrepreneurship Post-Pandemic. As we heard from the previous session, that about all the government initiatives, there are a lot of ideas and that we need to implement. Let's now hear it from the private sector perspectives. As our distinguished Minister of Cooperatives and SMEs has mentioned in his opening speech, Bapak Teten, collaboration between the government, private sector, and the key stakeholders are key to crack the issues on the private sector, on the women productivity and entrepreneurship post-pandemic. I think we all agree that the gender parity that affected women productivity in workforce and underrepresented of women in entrepreneurship also lower the potential for women to generate better living conditions. That's why it is important this afternoon in Indonesia time, that we have an open discussion and then we gain insights from the business communities across the G20 member countries on how to build a better program and policy in workforce for women, while at the same time supporting women's entrepreneurship that led to better creation of gender economic empowerment post-pandemic. You will hear from the distinguished speakers today that the private sectors have already conducted several programs to accelerate women's production, including through training and support mechanism, while at the same time opening more space for women's entrepreneurs within the company's supply chain and business system. As such, the objective of today's session, following the first session with the government perspectives, is to capture the best practices and lessons learned on how private sectors can help and stimulate women productivity and support women SME within their company supply chain system, especially post-pandemic. And also we would like to explore in this session what are the concrete action from the G20 member states to support the implementation. I will invite the distinguished speakers to share their insights and experience on how they have supported this far on productivity and entrepreneurship. What are the opportunities, lessons learned, best practices, but also the challenges and obstacles. In this session too, we have 3 distinguished speakers today. So this is a great opportunity. I would first introduce the speaker that is online. Is Miss Andrea present? Miss Andrea Grupo Kopatel joining us online. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, how are you?
We are good. How are you? We heard that you are in Davos.
Thank you for inviting Argentina.
Yes. So Miss Andrea Grupo Kopatel is a businesswoman and a philanthropist who has been advocated for near a decade to lead responsible and inclusive project. Currently, she leads Ampatel, which is an agriculture and livestock company, and the Resilienza SGR, which provide financial services for entrepreneurs and SMEs, especially women-owned ones. Andrea is also the president of FLOR, which is Foundation for Leadership and Organization Responsibility, which foster transparency, responsibility, and diversity in individuals as well as institutions. Andrea has been featured by IFC as one of the top 20 trailblazers, extraordinary female business leaders from developing countries. And she was also the co-chair of the W20 Argentina and author of the book Pasión por Hacer. Welcome, Andrea. And I would like to invite our second speaker, Ms. Mrinalini Venkatashalan, or Ms. Mini, on stage. As the Regional Director for Southeast Asia and Oceania, Ms. Mini provides support to WeConnect International by enhancing brand visibility and conducting outreach to women entrepreneurs and corporate buyers in Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Oceania. Her region is probably the fastest growing for small and medium enterprises, including those are women-led. With experience spanning over a decade, Mini has worked to bridge the gap between unmet social needs and service providers, giving large corporations, government agencies, community organizations, and social enterprises the platform to create measurable social impact. She speaks regularly at school, community, events, corporate gathering, and conferences about the role that gender equality plays in achieving a more sustainable world for everyone. And last but not least, joining us on site, I would like to welcome Ms. Dian Siswarini, who is also the W20 co-chair, and Ms. Dian Siswarini is the President, Director, and CEO of Excel Axiata. Ms. Dian has been at the forefront in promoting gender equality and empowerment programs in Excel Axiata. As the founder of SisterNet, she contributed to exposing more than 200,000 Indonesian women to digital literacy. For her passion and perseverance in women's empowerment, Ms. Dian Ibu Dian was chosen as Indonesia's most impactful women leaders in 2018, Asia's Power Businesswomen by Forbes in 2019, CEO of the Year in 2020, and Outstanding Female Leadership by Her Story in 2021. Please welcome all our 3 distinguished speakers and with a warm applause. So without further ado, let's hear from our distinguished speakers on what are the current practices, best practices, challenges, and opportunities. And I will start with our first speaker, Ms. Mini Venkatashalam from We Connect International to share how you support corporations and women-owned businesses to connect, especially connecting within the global supply chain. Ms. Minnie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that welcome. Thank you, that was very kind. So my name is Minnie, and I represent an organization called We Connect International. If you could go to the next slide, please. Today, if you look at global supply chains, whether with governments or with corporations, less than 1% of spend goes to women-owned businesses. And that's kind of crazy in 2022, right? This is not because women-owned businesses are not capable. We have a lot of women business owners in this room today, online joining us. They've all proven over and over again that they are extremely good at what they do. There is ingrained gender bias in supply chains in the way that vendors are picked for global supply chains, and that bias needs to be eradicated. And that is what we at We Connect International are doing in partnership with many of the amazing governments and corporations around the world. When the pandemic hit, women business owners were the worst hit because they had so many additional responsibilities that they had to take care of, and their businesses definitely suffered. So when we polled them to see what was it that they needed to come back, after this pandemic, there were two things they mentioned. The first is structured opportunities for contracts, for jobs, ability to sell their products, their services, in a way that would help them fund themselves, because women also receive very little funding from others. The second was training on how they can evolve, innovate, and become more competent in dealing, especially with the digital world post the pandemic. So this is where we partner with corporations to do this, and the private sector really has a lot of influence in changing this. If we could go to the next slide. We Connect International is a global nonprofit. We partner with today over close to 160 corporations and also multilaterals like the UN, the World Bank, and are in conversations with governments to buy more from women-owned businesses. This means that we have a global database of women-owned businesses who are super cool at what they do. And then we bring these buyers for every RFP, every RFI, every RFQ that they put out to look at how they can diversify their supply chain and to make sure that they are actually including women-owned businesses and giving them that seat at the table. This does not mean that they need to hand a contract to a woman just because she's a woman. What we're saying is they're really good at what they do. They deserve a seat at the table. They deserve the ability to pitch and to prove that they are the most agile, the most effective, the most competent, the most competitive, and that they deserve the contract. Because right now, the way we are looking at it, if we are excluding 40% of their communities, that's what we need after this pandemic. Next slide, please. So these are just a few of the corporations that have committed to buying more from women-owned businesses. They are some of the world's largest corporations. We have some of them here in the room today. And together they represent more than $1 trillion in purchasing power. If they could just invest a little bit of that into women-owned businesses, can you imagine the change that would happen? For example, in Singapore, where I'm from, we did research and that proved that if we could bring women business owners up to the same level as male business owners, that would add $95 billion to Singapore's economy, which is 20% of our GDP. Now let's look at that across multiple countries and think about how much that would add to the world's economy, especially in a time when we're all facing an economic crisis. So next slide, please. So like I said, this is not a charity. This is not that these businesses should feel sorry for the women business owners. It is just the right thing to do. For a corporation that actually is more diverse in their supply chain, the Hackett Group did some research globally a couple of years ago, and they proved that if an organization is more inclusive in their sourcing, they spend 20% less on their procurement operations and have a 120% return. That's just good for the corporation's bottom line, right? But you're also finding the most agile, the most effective, the most competitive supplier. And in fact, a lot of the corporations that we work with, when we introduce them to women business owners, they come back to and say, oh my God, this person is so cool. They're so innovative. They're more agile. They do the work in half the time. They are the perfect supplier for us. We just never knew they existed. And that's it. That's all the women entrepreneurs need. They need that foot in the procurement cycles. But it's also about then, as for the corporations, to enhance their corporate brand, because as they invest in women-owned businesses, they are providing more employment for women, because women-owned businesses are the first to employ more women to enable communities to thrive. They are ensuring that their biggest customers, because women have the highest purchasing power, 80% of the world's purchasing is done by women. So they're really talking to their clients, right? So they need to be, it's a corporate branding for them. And a lot of corporations have actually understood this. So this year we did something called Rise to the Challenge. And we asked corporations to make public commitments about how much they want to buy from women-owned businesses. And if you go to the next slide, here are a few amazing organizations that have made these commitments. Sanofi is going to double their spend with women-owned businesses by 2025. And they're already going, miles ahead. They're halfway there. This is more than 20% of their current spend. So it is a big jump. Next slide, please. Goldman Sachs is going to increase their spend with small and diverse vendors by 50% by 2025. Again, Goldman Sachs' spend is extensive. Can you imagine how much that would put in the hands of women business owners by 2025? The next slide, please. Kyndryl, which is the organization that has just broken off from IBM, they are going to be committing to spend outside of the US, because most of their spend so far has been in the US, to increase it by 10%. That is substantial. That's not in the millions, that's in the billions. And even if like 10% of that goes into the hands of women, that has potential to just make all the difference. Next slide, please. Johnson & Johnson, again, is trying to increase their spend by 20%. They are one of the most active corporations in this region and are already reviewing their spend with women-owned businesses across Asia Pacific, across the world, and are actively trying to get more women business owners into their supply chain. Next slide, please. Logitech is an industry where they find it very hard to find women because it is STEM industries tend to have the lowest representation of women. Yet they want to increase their spend by 10%, and they're actively not just helping to that spend, but also investing in training women business owners to be competent to work with them and to get smaller IT businesses up to the level where they can work with Logitech. Last slide, please. And these, for me, are our champions. Procter & Gamble not only is committing to buy from women-owned businesses, but they also invest a lot of time, money, expertise of their senior staff towards training women-owned business owners to be business ready. They work on everything from trainings on how to better your business strategy, how to identify a customer, and how to pitch to them. That have more stable human resources. With Meta, a large corporation, and that's a huge jump for a small business, right? We've had successes in Singapore where organizations have come together to create better products for protection, so masks, sanitizers, etc. So this is where the impact that the private sector can have in building women-owned businesses. It just takes that one step to actually address your bias and to start making your supply chain more diverse. With that, I'll stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mini. This is how interested in what a sharing of best practices, how big, large corporations have included the women SMEs into their global value chain. So this is an example to say that we should, you know, the value that is created is not only for them, and it's not a charity, but it's a win-win solution for sustainable growth, because it also leads to the multiplier effect to these women. They are uplifted in their capabilities. So well done, and this is a great sharing and inspiration for all of us. Let's now move to the second speaker, Ms. Andrea, who is joining us online, and something that is also sustainable is the education and financial, including collateral. And I will give the floor to Ms. Andrea Grobo Kopatel from FLOR Foundation to share what FLOR has done to make sustainable improvements.
Again,
the floor is yours. The screen is yours, sorry.
Again, thank you for inviting Argentina. Thank you, Anita, Jan, and Mini, and G20 Empower for this opportunity to be part of an important conversation. Thank you also to the distinguished ministers and delegates and to everyone online. As you say, I make a living from agriculture and cattle production in Argentina, but labor and financial inclusion for all, especially for women, are my purpose. So now I dedicate 95% of my time working for labor and financial equality as well as good governance. I created Resilience and Fleur Foundation as my contribution to the biggest challenge I observed these years before. I will share my experiences and business case with you today. But during the pandemic, the main challenge for everyone, including women and companies, was the health and well-being of the individual and the family. Women and men had to think as president and CEO about the organization and management of their families and household activities. What society needs now is for every woman to keep thinking as president and CEO in every part of her life, including her own personal development and visibility and participation in more local, national, and international networks. We must contribute our knowledge and skills to both the public and private sector. Another challenge and obstacle to women's participation in the workforce and enterprise from even before the pandemic is financial inclusion. If we compare OECD countries to Latin America, the situation is alarming. The number of women with bank accounts is 24% versus 49%. And when it comes to loans, the number are 50% versus 11%. What we need now for the economy is equal access to the full range of financial services, together with educational and financial literacy. Women's economic empowerment is the best strategy for business and global economic growth. It creates higher productivity and diversification, higher income equality, household wellness, and lower poverty. It's important too because the pandemic highlight the need to be prepared for the worst, such as death or divorce. Also, currently, there are too few women in decision-making position. What we need now is to ensure that you and I do not have to wait 267 years as the World Economic Forum has predicted. A problem for small medium enterprise, the lack of guarantees. Resilience, the mutual guarantee company I created, is essentially the bridge between small medium enterprise and banks and capital markets. We like to say that we act at the CFO, at their CFO, which includes supporting them to strengthen their financial CV, their bank history. Women often lack collateral and capital guarantees because they do not have as many assets as men do. To counter these obstacles, we provide one, collateral, and the second, advice, including insisting that they open a bank account. Out of the 40 mutual guarantees companies registered in Argentina by law, we are the pioneer for the financial inclusion of persons with disabilities, rural women. We proactively seek out in marginalized areas outside of the capital city. We work with more than 200 companies now, 35% of which are women-owned, 40% of which have opened their first account in capital markets. We celebrate every success because big dreams are accomplished one step at a time. And then my other hat is Fleur Foundation, who is about preparing organization to be more responsible. This includes be more diverse. Organization will be more responsible if more women are in decision-making position. All gender leaders will be more responsible if they understand the importance of diversity and inclusion. Flor Foundation has a program in Latin America called Women in Decision, a corporate governance focus that helps women leaders to keep breaking the glass ceiling. Over 700 women have graduated and networked about over the past 10 years into the directorship, shareholders, and entrepreneurial positions. We now are expanding across the global south and will incorporate men also. We have another program called Board Experience, who create internship for women. They gain experience by participating on the board of a reputable company that proposed itself for the program, and the company benefit from improved governance by the diverse representation and input of a female member. Currently, we're starting a pilot with some companies in Argentina. And I have some ideas from the G20 action that I finish now if you agree, and then I wait for your question. Thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Andrea. So yes, we will discuss about your ideas and recommendations later, but I think the insights on how you put your foundation, talk about the business cases on collateral, financial advisors, and also education has been very insightful. So thank you very much. So last but not least, we have our third speaker who is present here, Ibu Dian Siswarini, who is not only the CEO of Excel Axiata, who is also spearheading a lot of digital literacy for women, but also Ibu Dian is the W20 co-chair. And as we know that economic inclusion is one of the key priorities in W20. So we feel that there should be a close alignment between what W20 recommendations and insights and the G20 Empower on how private sector can boost women productivity and also empower women in SMEs. So let's hear from Ibu Dian on the insights from the W20 angle and also from what Excel is doing. Ibu Dian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lenita, for the kind introduction. And also thank you for the previous speakers, Millie and Andrea, for very enlightening sharing. So as I'm the co-chair of WT Indonesia, so what I will share today is actually insight and also best practices related with women in SMEs that related from W20 events and the discussion so far. So for those who are not familiar with W20, we also reflected in the W20 communique. So we have 4 priority issues. So the first one is about discriminating and inequality, which is, actually this is like very old challenges, but, after many ages still there, yeah. And second priorities is about economic inclusion, and our focus here is on supporting women in MSMEs. And then the third topics is for marginalized women, which is rural women, also women with disabilities. And the last priority issue is about health and how we actually create gender equitable health response. So for today, we will be zooming into the second topic, which is the women in SMEs. Next slide, please. So, yeah, can we move to the next slide? So we can see in this slide persistent key challenges that faced by women in SMEs that actually we have gathered from experts, from stakeholders, actors that have played in this arena. So we see here that the first issues that they face is underdeveloped ecosystem. So for instance, a lack of a policy framework, lack of shared information that these women can actually exchange with each other. Second is the lack access to formal financial resources, which is very important for them to fuel their business growth. And the third one is about the minimum access to digital tools and technology that also very important to unlock their opportunities. And actually, it's not only about the lack of access, but also the digital literacy limitation that currently we face among these women. And then the next challenges is the ongoing structural and legal barriers. Yeah. And it seems that it is still very prominent. Yeah, for instance, that women, they cannot get a loan unless they get approval from the husband, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and the last one that is also very important, but probably not discussed so much, is about the social and cultural bias. Yeah, because it seems that women and business are still things that probably perceived as not something that is a good combination. Yeah, so then women who wants to go for the business still face these social challenges. Okay, next. So I'm very proud that my W20 sister have put effort and also commitments to discuss how to face those challenges. And we have resulted several insights. And first is, we actually see that it is very integral to create an ecosystem of women empowerment. So for instance, that for any private sectors that aims to support women, it's better for them not to focus on one aspect only. So for instance, not to give them access to finance or give them fund, but develop the other part of the ecosystem as well. Yeah. So for instance, like that, improve their social capability, improve their confidence, upskill their knowledge, and open their access to a bigger network and removing social barriers. Yeah. Second is it is important to actually provide formal financial access mapping available options that suit their needs. So there is no one-size-fits-all solution here. The third insight is that access to finance needs to be provided along with the support for women to have control over their assets and also finance decision making. And this is, Indonesia is a very big problem because usually it's not the women that have the access legally, the asset legally. So usually it's the man in the family or the husband, yeah. And although they are the one who owns the business, but the financial decision making to use the fund that they receive is not their own. Networking platform for these women. Use this business usually boys club, quite rare for an association for these women in SMSC that we have to facilitate. Okay, so now I would like to move on to the one example of the best practice that we have done, which is called Sispreneur. So this is actually a comprehensive and integrated business incubation that to encourage ideas and innovation for women, so then they can becoming part of the digital economic growth. So in this program, actually, we are not only providing the upscaling by providing online and offline classes, but also we actually providing hand-holding assistance. So we also have a program for monitoring and tracking their progress. And also we provide business coaching, yeah, and business funding. And on top of that, we also create business sisterhood. One session of the program, we have more than 1,000 number of participants. And we see that from the program that more than 70% or almost 80% their business going online. Yeah, so we can see here the statistic of the type of their businesses. Next. So in W20, we actually want to support this program and elevate the program. So then we can open access to international market and connect these SMEs to wider investor communities. And also we would like to upskilling their business skills with inviting international coaches and tutors. Yeah. So probably, Lerita, this is the share from W20. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Dian. This is very insightful. Insightful from looking at the challenges on the more wider angle, that this is, from the regulation of the country, the policies, and also the stigma and biases that is going on in the social environment. But also very interesting as well from the recommendation that W20, so this gives good insights to us in G20 Empower, that this should be done as an ecosystem. Both ecosystem of the support, which is not only financial access, but including skills, network, even the confidence and the mindset, but also the ones that are working together should also be an ecosystem. As you see in the Sispreneurs, not only the private sector, but you need the support of the government, the associations, and institutional educations, and so on. So this is good insights, very valuable, and to that, leading to that, I think I would have a question for each one of you. So as we are going to our plenary tonight, we would like to get some thoughts and ideas on how can G20 Empower contribute to support to the concrete action, so concrete action and programs to enhance women's role in the workplace and especially in MSMEs. And I think I would maybe first give the floor to our online speaker, Andrea. You have some ideas and thoughts, and it would be great if you can share to us what's the ideas and thoughts, a concrete action plan that we could commit together in G20 Empower from the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a slide. If you have here. Otherwise, thank you. The G20 Empower can encourage, support, and enhance women's roles in workplace and entrepreneurship through positive discrimination. First one, quotas. Within a time frame to increase women in decision. This can involve working with women networks to then identify women who can participate in decision-making position in public and private sector. Second, women participation in local and international network with other women and also in different chambers and associations. Third, prioritizing women-owned and women-led companies for public procurement and other opportunities. Four, providing guarantees and more financial solutions, including lower interest rate for women-owned or women-led companies. Five, incorporate public or private subsidies nursery at workplace to enable female workers to attend to both their professional duties and child care. We must join our forces and we must communicate effectively the best practices which have shown results. Otherwise, we will spend a lot of time and money working in isolation. I am very happy to work in W20 with Dina, and now we connect, and I believe thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Very clear. And I think the collaboration is really emphasized in here.
Collaboration.
Ms. Mini, any thoughts from you, your insights and recommendation?
Absolutely. I think for me it is, going back to what Andrea said, providing the opportunity in both public and private procurement for women-owned businesses to participate, right? Like I said, this is not about giving them a contract on a platter. It's about giving them the tools to be successful in these organizing. So a best practice of that is, for example, IBM. For them, for any contracts above 50,000, it is they have to have one diverse supplier in the bidding process. And if they're unable to do that, they have to go right to their senior leadership to get approval for why they're unable to find a women-owned business that can do that, right? So it is, and many of the KPIs for their staff are tied to how much diversity they can show in their supply chain. So bonuses, etc. So it incentivizes people to do that, right? So I think that's a really great best practice. The second is also going back to what Ibu Dian said about boys' clubs, to put in the effort to make associations, networks, opportunities for incubators, etc., more gender diverse, okay, or gender neutral rather, to have women be able to access what have been traditionally been boys' clubs, which then help their businesses grow and thrive, and only then feed into better suppliers for larger organizations.
Very insightful. Thank you so much, Ms. Mini. I think that was very concrete, especially the IBM example. So if the private sector would like to initiate any, it has to be in the corporate policies, it has to be linked to the KPIs. Everybody needs to be incentivized for that, because otherwise it's just a nice to have. So that's very good insight. And I think your second on the association to be more diverse and incubators, I think it's very aligned with what Ibu Dian was sharing about Cispreneur. So I will hand over to Ibu Dian if you have any recommendations, additional insights for us G20 Empower in terms of concrete action.
Yeah, Lenita, this morning actually we heard from all advocates of G20 Empower in Indonesia about their initiatives and all of them are great initiatives. Yeah, but it is similar to what Andrea mentioned, that we still do like standalone a project. We still do standalone initiatives that probably if we collaborate better, if we combine, then the synergy that we can achieve is much higher. And the multiplier effect in terms of economic value and also the impact wider society, it will be much better. So, however, usually we kind of like having like a certain branding, which is we have to actually remove. So then it's not about who actually does a certain initiative, is about who will get the benefit of those initiatives. Yeah, so I think I just want to emphasize that. So then the sisterhood that will be stronger, and also we can recover together, recover stronger as G20 Indonesian theme this year.
This very insightful, Ibu Dian. This is a great closing, actually, for this, that it is not, I think the initiatives are great, but how to make sure that these initiatives are worked on as an ecosystem, not standalones, and it doesn't matter who gets the credits, but what matters is what is the value that is created and who are impacted by these initiatives. So let's take these words for our plenary tonight, where we would try to build our recommendations and concrete action plan, and that would be a good insights for us. So, if I may, because of time, I think the MC is reminding me that we're running out of time. Look, I think this has been. I hope that you really enjoyed this second session, the side event. Because as we know, we all agree that this pandemic has widened the gap of gender disparity and also opportunities, especially for women in businesses. And also it has impacted productivity and the lack of business opportunities. But this pandemic is also a joint call for action. It is an acceleration because we all have a joint burning platform to go through this together. And that's what the Recover Together, Recover Stronger is very key on that. So I think there's an opportunity for acceleration, and all the changes that we need to make are not just marginal changes or silos changes, but they are transformational changes that are done by ecosystem. As such, I think this has been a very insightful discussion, and this will be very insightful for our plenary tonight. And I would like to thank you, and it was a privilege for me. My name is Leita Tobing from BCG. I'm the managing partner and director from the Jakarta office, to be your moderator and to moderate this very insightful session. Andrea, who is joining online, Ms. Mini and Ibu Dian, thank you very much, and let us have a joint round of applause for this wonderful, distinguished speakers. And I will hand it over back to the MC.
Thank you for our moderator and speakers who are very inspiring female role model. We have just learned that there are still many challenges on women's inclusion, but fortunately with event like today, women's voice can be heard better and more globally. Ladies and gentlemen, before we end today's event, recap and closing remarks will be delivered by G20 Empower Chair. Please welcome Ms. Yesi Yasetia.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished G20 Empower delegates, advocates, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank all the spokesperson and moderators coming in from US, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, Indonesia, and Argentina. I think we all can agree that both sessions were insightful